Welcome to the latest episode of the IOTA Cybersecurity Panel, where tech thought leaders share their insight and opinions on the current channel topics. I'm Brian Sherman, Content Director of IOTA and host of this ongoing series. Today I'll be discussing next-gen technologies and the threats ahead with my esteemed panel of cybersecurity experts, including Matthew Koenig, VP of Sales at SecureNow, Travis Ray, Director of Channel Sales at HighWire Networks, and Jason Norton, Product Marketing Director at VIPRE Security. Welcome to the IOTA Cybersecurity Panel, gentlemen.
Brian?
Let's start off with quick introductions before we get to today's topic. Let's start with you, Matthew. What are your primary responsibilities at SecureNow?
Sure. I oversee strategic partnerships as well as all of sales.
Very good. We'll throw it over to Travis.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I'm the Director of Channel Sales for Overwatch by HighWire Networks, and I work directly with our MSPs and channel partners to help them go to market with our services and everything that they need.
Very good. And Jason, don't let me forget you.
Yeah, thanks. Product Marketing Director for VIPRE Security. My primary responsibilities are to drive revenue, product positioning, sales training, marketing collateral, and I handle the primary messaging.
Very good. Our focus today, one of the things we want to talk about is what's ahead. And so let's focus on the future a little bit too. Name one thing you're looking forward to doing when life returns to what we hope will be normal after the pandemic. Why don't I start with you, Travis?
Man, what am I looking forward to? What am I not looking forward to? I'd say top of the list would be being able to go out and see live music and tailgate again.
How about you, Matthew?
I cannot wait to finally go on my honeymoon that we've been postponing forever.
Oh no, when did you get married?
Got married about about a year ago now. And we're planning to go to Costa Rica in December. And of course that got pushed in many different directions. So cannot wait to finally go.
That makes sense. I wish you luck. Hopefully we get there before long. And Jason, what are you just itching to do?
Yeah, personal perspective, I agree with Travis. Can't wait for life to get back to normal with events, sports, concerts. But from a professional perspective, I think in-person collaboration, particularly marketing, creative, it can be difficult. So I'd like to just take a couple weeks off of remote control meetings and do some in-person collaboration.
Yeah, I get that. As much as some of us hate travel after a while, when you don't do it for 6 months, you start to get a little itchy to have, human contact again too, especially in the industry, in this industry in particular, because we learn so many things from not just peers, but those that we meet with on a regular basis. So let's go on to today's topic. We're shifting our attention away from, what we hope will be in the past, the last several months, and focusing on the future for this discussion, especially as Q4 approaches. We're getting closer to 2021. I know everybody's looking forward to putting 2020 behind them, but let's talk about preparation for next year, strategies. MSPs need to be in planning mode or start getting close to being in planning mode. What are the biggest threats that providers will have to deal with in the coming months? And I'm just going to throw this out there. Who'd like to jump in?
Heard about it. And the Secret Service put out something recently about it. Is MSPs all of a sudden need to be worried about being attacked. It's something they never had to worry about before. They were worried about securing their clients. Now they have to worry about securing themselves so they can secure their clients. And that brings a whole new ball game to it because, as the Secret Service said, people are figuring out that if they can get one, well, they can get many. And, one shot gets you 10 times as many pieces of information or credit cards or, identities or whatever the case may be. So I think that's going to be something, especially going forward, that they're going to have to be cognizant of.
Yeah, I'd agree and amplify what Matthew's saying. From a security perspective, MSPs are definitely under scrutiny. it's a bigger target if you're an MSP. And then if you work with an RMM partner, they're an even bigger target yet. So the fundamentals of securing your house first haven't changed. And I think Matthew's right on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we've seen an increase in APTs, both nation state actors and highly organized cyber criminals that are crafting new attacks specifically designed to exploit, existing connections MSPs have with their customers. And regulations of some kind are coming. So be ahead of the curve and, like Jason said, get your house in order now. Start continuously assessing your security posture, layer your defenses. And you can't solve COVID, for your clients, but you can make sure that it's not cybercrime that puts them out of business.
It's interesting because when was the last time, as you try to explain to people what an MSP is, I tell my friends and they go, MS what? But, as you're talking to people about what an MSP is, all of a sudden the Secret Service is talking about MSPs and the importance of them and securing them. I would say that's a significant increase on the scale of things real quick.
I'd have to say before COVID-19 set in, the MSP threat was one of the hottest topics. We were hearing about it everywhere. And then it kind of creeped in again after about a month of quarantine. But in the media in particular, it's gotten a little bit quieter in the last couple of months. So it's good to, I say it's not good to hear, but I think it's important to reinforce the fact that these attacks are getting more and more prevalent. And in the industry, I don't know that we're really beating that drum loud enough right now, probably because there's so many things going on from a threat perspective for clients, from a work from home situation, and everything's still in disarray in many cases too. That, I hate to use the term new norm, but are you seeing it? What are you as a company or as companies doing to help reinforce that with your partners? Are you having those discussions regularly? Are you hearing it a lot?
What we talk about constantly is, one of the things we do is human security. And, when we talk to the MSPs, forget about them selling our product. When we talk to them about them, one of the things we do is we actually offer, when they're a partner of us, our service is at no charge to the team internally. And you'd be surprised how many of them don't use it, right? They have that ability. They have a quote unquote not for resale copy, of making sure that their house is in order, and they don't do it. So a lot of what we've been talking about lately is, why are you not implementing this? You have it. It doesn't cost you anything. Why are you not making sure your own team is doing the things that you expect from your customers to make sure that you're taken care of? And it just blew me away how many of them we talked to that weren't doing it. So we really pushed the human security aspect because, one of the things I know we'll talk about later in the agenda is I truly believe that without a layered security approach, covering multiple sides, there's no way you can truly protect yourself.
So basically, one of the biggest threats is still not following through from an MSP perspective and policing themselves as much as they could. It's very obviously everybody's putting protection levels in place, but when there's so many things scattered around, it's easy to lose attention and make sure that you're not drinking your own champagne with every security solution you use. Yeah, I like to get rid of that. Eating your own dog food. I get so many people like, I hate that. I don't like. So I've adopted the drinking your champagne.
Yeah. I use that all the time too. That's why it made me grin when you said that.
Maybe I stole it from you, actually, Travis. But it's a great way to do it.
Yeah. I love using that. Yeah. With what's the new normal, right? I think a lot of it's really been the same old persistent threats, just with a new twist, right? Cyber criminals will always rely on fear, urgency, and disruption. They've just got a new lever to pull, and MSPs need to be aware of that internally as well, that they're, focus on the fundamentals and do that right. And when something like this happens, the new normal is still pretty new for you. So have those policies in place, have those procedures in place, drink your own champagne, do those things to protect yourself. And it makes it easier to be agile and pivot when something like this happens.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And you talk about the new normal, or you hesitate to say that. But what about the new network, right? So the expanding network edge. Assuming maybe a more mature MSP, or maybe that's a bit of a misnomer. I think the maturity level might indicate more layered security or a more fundamental approach. And then assuming that's the case, what other services are out there for Q4, Q1, the new network? And so from our perspective, there are some opportunities for the MSPs to find those billable services like VPN, the web access control, or DNS filtering, security awareness training. The list goes on and on. Password management, full disk encryption, right? A lot of laptops went out. What happens if those get left at the coffee shop? So, I just think there's a set of services that are out there for MSPs to map to the new network.
Yeah, I mean, adding on to what Jason said, I think that as we continue down this path, I think work from home is going to be huge. But I think where we used to call it remote working, it's truly going to take on that persona of remote working anywhere, anytime. And people are going to have to, from an MSP standpoint, they're going to have to support the hybrid network, and the hybrid delivery of services where you don't just have to worry about somebody working out of their house. You have to worry about someone working from Hawaii, the beach, their lake house, wherever the case may be, because now that people are working, quote unquote, remotely, they can be anywhere, and you need to be able to secure them. So it's a whole new set of services that you can deliver. On one hand, that you need to worry about, but on the other hand, that you'll get the opportunity to provide, sell, and add additional revenue from.
Yeah, I think when you look at we were talking about the new normal, and again, it's not just, to your point, remote work from home, but it's also how are companies adapting, shrinking their office footprint. There's going to be some security implications because they're going to be shifting in some cases. We've seen, I think it was Pinterest last week, basically just opted out of their entire new building in San Francisco because they said remote work is going to make more sense for us. So everybody's reshaping their business, their workflow, all of those different things, and even doing hybrid operations, for example. They may have some people working remote, they may work in flex office space when the pandemic lets up, or even just in smaller offices. How is that going to affect what MSP's perception of what they have to do to address the threat matrix?
Well, I think the shifting paradigm that you talked about is here to stay, and I don't think it can be understated. The shift that's occurring, the most staunch companies that would never kind of allow work from home are starting to warm up to the idea. Probably took a pandemic to show some of the slower adoptees the cost savings that can occur. You can cut down on that Class A office space, right, for unnecessary heads when they can work remotely. Also, young talent, they'll look at you like you have two heads if you tell them that they have to commute an hour and a half each way. So you can't attract top talent trying to hire from, a physical drive away from an office anymore, in my opinion. In terms of what can MSPs capitalize on, I think user and data protection becomes really key as the network expands, like Matthew said, to anywhere. Coffee shop, my aunt's house when I'm on vacation visiting, and who knows if her router has been password's been changed, or if it's been upgraded, to encrypted. So you've got to have that kind of technology riding usually on the device.
Yeah, I think that's all spot on. It's all about the awareness, and I think a big thing that MSPs can start doing a better job of, and we can all do, is focusing on a culture of security hygiene and cyber hygiene, right? And talking to users and helping educate not just the decision makers who you're hoping will sign a quote for a new service, but their entire workforce on what to look out for. Like I was saying before, there's a lot of phishing emails around COVID, but they're using the same tricks. this just looks different. It's still capitalizing on that fear and that urgency. And you could be doing your clients a really big favor by talking to them about this. Set up a virtual lunch and learn or something, and talk to them about the new risks that are out there and how it just looks different now.
To your point, it's one of those things where they're going to have to come up with not only multi-layered security approaches, but multi-pronged, right? They're going to have to come up with a security approach for different situations. Now, it's not going to be 20 different situations, but, it's going to be 3. As Travis said, it's going to be working at a grandma's house, okay? And you don't know what's going on with that router there. Coffee shop or hotel, it's a public place, where grandma's at least is a little more private. So you're going to have to come up with a multi-layered, multi-pronged security approach. And the other thing was, again, as Travis talked about, you got to teach people. You can't assume they get it. A statistic that I saw, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago at this point, it was in the Wall Street Journal. It said they interviewed like 5,000 people, employees pretty much. 49% of them, only 49% could tell you what a phishing email was. Forget about how to avoid it or anything. 49% of the people they surveyed could even tell you what a fish was, not calling it a bass or a salmon or something like that. That's scary. I mean, you have to educate these people.
It's not a koi. Is that what you're telling me?
Exactly.
Got to get our fish correct. No,
it's really got to be. I was just going to say, it's really got to be top to bottom in the entire workforce too. It's not just the CEOs and executives who need to be aware of it. It needs to be everybody, and it needs to be a cultural thing. And that's a consultative, trusted authority thing that MSPs can do to add value to their relationships without charging their clients something, by just prioritizing security in every conversation and increasing that awareness with their clients. It'll go a long way.
One of the other things that I see MSPs do a lot is they try to sell security add-ons. Honestly, it drives me out of my mind. And, Brian, this. For the last 5 years, I've probably spoken at 50 to 60 events a year, literally. And I say the same thing every time. Mr. MSP owner, you're a smart person. You know what's going on. Why do you think that when you say the word add-on, that a business owner you're talking to will act any different than you will when I say add-on? Because as soon as I hear add-on, I go, I don't need it. It's an add-on. I don't need it. I need the base package. And the more you try to sell add-ons to your security package and not just say, here's my security package, right? The more difficulty you're causing yourself, and the more you're not going to be able to do the things that you absolutely know you need to do to protect your clients. Well, they didn't agree to it, so there's nothing I can do. Yeah, there is. Give them your security package and say, this is it. Include everything.
And I'm betting right now, based on the amount of people that are working outside of a typical office building, there are more endpoints right now being protected than at any point. At least there has been. I know there's some businesses that are probably shut down or scaled back, but for MSPs, their job's gotten harder, not just because of the fact that they've moved locations, but now they have more devices under management as well. What challenges is that presenting right now? I know from a security training perspective, it doesn't matter what they're using. They need to know the best practices. But what about from a tech perspective, Jason or Travis?
Yeah, I think security awareness training is important, as we just talked about. But moving to the technical, I think that you're right. There's an intersection where technology meets security awareness training aspects. So for MSPs, I think it's critical to look at third-party email security, for example. A lot of MSPs use Office 365, just that base package with the kind of basic security that comes with. There's just far too many exploits written for Office 365 to rely on that. So what some MSPs don't know is they're at risk, but the good news is it translates to billable services. So I think it's important to sell an advanced technology package that has phishing and attachment protection, and then overall email security. That's critical to meet at that intersection of the training, and it's going to take care of a lot of the phishing that we're going to talk about, as we move on, because the phishing campaigns are rampant. And to Matthew's point, is if you don't know what phishing is, imagine how bad off that these folks can be. Meaning, the phishing campaigns are pretty sophisticated now. It's no longer from the prince of Nigeria or just misspellings or something very obvious. They're pretty sophisticated now. A lot of bad URLs. Some of them are being weaponized. It's called 0 hour, right, guys? So the link is clean when it goes through your normal email security, but weaponized an hour or two later. And then when you re-click on it. So there's just some nuance there. But good news for MSPs are these are all billable services, and lastly, it's cheaper to use a third-party email security than it would be to try to chase after that Microsoft O365 package up to the E5 category. That's very expensive.
Matt, I was waiting on you, but I guess I'll jump in there real quick and add to that. One of the things that we've been seeing, and that I try to help MSPs understand from a technical perspective as well, is that there's a need to understand there's a significant driver for securing the identity. That's not a new concept per se, but it's proving to be absolutely critical right now, and I think it's going to be for a long time going forward. We always strongly recommend utilization of MFA, especially if you have like type 3 factors like biometrics. If you've got that that level of access control, give it to your users and secure them better, and help protect their identities and their data. Like we talked about before, protecting data is going to become even more crucial as home networks, the IOCs that are in home networks are potentiated in attacks. But overall, MSPs need to also adjust their clients' perspective and expectations. I agree completely with the add-on thing. I mean, security should be mandatory. And I see that's a trend I see happening that I think is really going to stick. Because you can't allow your customers to procrastinate managing their cyber risk, because it'll be too late when they finally realize their negligence after an attack. So, make it mandatory, right? And put the right things in that stack. And we'll talk more about, what needs to go in that stack. But if you're not already focusing on how you can help secure their identity, start doing that right away.
Yeah. I think sometimes we forget how much words matter too. Going back to the add-in discussion is, if you think about add-in, it sounds optional. And
right.
I think that's, as an industry, we're kind of tentative sometimes to go, well, we'd like to sell you this, but it comes more of, forget the consultative part, is they're looking to you, say, this isn't optional, this is a requirement today, standard operating.
When it's optional, it sounds like a luxury.
Yeah.
And security it's not a luxury. It is a business risk that you need to be managing, just like every other one that we're more familiar with, because cybersecurity is somewhat newer, but it's not a luxury. It should be an absolute priority.
It's not completely static either. The best practices of cybersecurity, not completely static, right? It's a little bit fluid from year to year. So take these opportunities at contract renewal or QBRs or whatever the case may be to lay out what your minimum benchmark is for security. The kind of mandatory, like Travis said, and then review the best practices and try to understand where these customers come up against the best practices compared to the benchmark. And,
kind of like evaluating your stack every time you upgrade your security policies and procedures. Every quarter, if not every year, you should be updating your security policies and procedures. And to Jason's point, there's new technologies coming out. There's new threats that come up. You should be evaluating your security stack on an ongoing basis. And the other thing I see with a lot of MSPs I talk to me, we don't like to talk about sales, right? A lot of MSPs hate talking about sales. But it's sales 101 in this respect. If you don't use your own stuff, how do you expect to sell it to someone else? And if you're not passionate enough to say, no, this is what you get, and here are the reasons why, But to say, okay, you don't need this, or yeah, you know what, you're right, you don't need, that's wishy-washy. And why would I look to you for assistance if you're letting me, to Travis's point, dictate what's going on? No, this is what you get. This is why you get it, you know, and you will have this because otherwise I can't protect you.
So, and I think the next point, so talking about static, so the next part is setting the expectation that, by the way, next year it'll be different, or next week it'll be different.
Right.
It is, you know, so used to, here is your computer and here is your base security package. Now it's, we won't know what we have for you next year. And I don't think as an industry, that's ever been kind of the standard operating procedure, is going in to say, yeah, what you have today won't be the same thing as what'll be here next year, because the threats are changing quickly. So the technology needs to change quickly to keep pace. And I think that is different for the industry. Many people aren't comfortable having those type of sale, whether it's a sales discussion or a consulting discussion. It has to be a discussion within, especially the clients and the end users too. I think the end users are becoming a big part.
If the price moves in any way, shape, or form, you know, you can't be paralyzed by that. It, again, new technologies, new threats, you know, you have to adapt just like we have to adapt. And if you don't want to, then that's a whole different story down the road.
Well, that lends itself perfectly into where we were going with the discussion, which is talking about next gen. And we know our industry loves to coin new terms, and this is the latest one, is next gen, whatever that may mean to you, to your partners, to their end users. But what aspiring technologies do you believe will have the most impact on the SMB part of, and the channel companies that support those organizations right now? I'll throw that out to the group.
You know, it's not as new per se, but UBA, I think, is really important right now, and is going to continue to be indefinitely. A couple others off the top of my head, you know, are like micro-segmentation through zero trust network access. You know, that's huge right now. And I think that's going to become something that like 5 years from now, we'll wonder, like, how come that wasn't standard 5 years ago? Because it's so standard now. And the other thing too, I mean, just like next gen, the other thing everyone likes to throw around is AI and machine learning. And they can be really great tools, and, you know, to have, and then actually find out what that machine learning and AI is before you invest in something, because a lot of times it's just a marketing buzzword. And I will admit I have been guilty of that with some solutions that I have sold, where we said, yeah, it's got ML, it's got AI, it's awesome. Moving on before you ask me more questions about it, because I don't want you to really dig into it, because it's something that marketing said would sound good more than it was real. So, you know, and then last, I guess, is, you know, try to get as many pieces to the puzzle into your single pane of glass for security as possible. And that's through XDR like we offer, or any other solution that can pull everything into one place. And, you know, the more pieces you have to the puzzle, it's going to make threat hunting, you know, and investigation more comprehensive and better. So look for ways to be able to integrate tools that are integratable. And if there's AI, find out what it's all about and start looking at zero trust.
Yeah, I agree with Travis. That's why I was kind of chuckling here. I have the same thoughts. The zero trust framework is interesting. The machine learning, dig into it. What is a buzzword? You know, as marketing, you know, guy, I've been scolded before for saying next gen during the presentation. Knock it off! Quit saying those buzzwords. You know, what does that even mean? You know, as they start throwing cabbage. But yeah, you've got to get under the hood. ML, what does that mean? Where does it come from? What kind of samples are you using? How are you processing it? But you know, I'd agree. The threat hunting, the zero trust framework, and then, you know, finally, if it's not cutting edge, it sure is needed right now. We talk about identity access management, password as a service, stuff like that.
You know, mine isn't as technical because I don't deal in the quote-unquote software hardware space anymore, though I try to keep up as much as I can. But as they always say, if you don't read every day, you don't pick up on it, you're stupider. So I don't keep up with it, but what I do know is that MSPs are starting to demand, Travis hit on this, integration, right? They're starting to demand that you have these partnerships and you present complete solutions to them and not have them go to 42 different vendors to pull it together. They want what 42 vendors provide, but they want you and them to get together and offer them a single solution under a single pane of glass, not only from a management perspective, but from a delivery perspective. You know, I want zero trust. I want identity management. I want antivirus at its simplest level. I want to buy it from one person.
You don't want tool sprawl, do you, Matthew? You don't want a bunch of tool sprawl.
Yep. Yeah. And I think you're going to see that more and more because MSPs, as they become more complex, because this becomes more complex to manage, I think they're going to demand that. I think they're going to start to demand that they don't have to buy 72 different tools from 72 different people and manage it.
Do you think part of it comes back to too, and I see this when I'm talking to MSPs a lot, is sometimes they want to have that unique tool out there, and then after they play around with it for 3-6 months, they find out that it doesn't play well with all of their other solutions, so it goes the wayside. It comes down to their managed services providers, even though they may not market themselves as that managed part, is being able to provide good technology because you've got everything under that single pane of glass, to the point that was brought up earlier, and it works. It works easy. You get reporting. You can instantaneously or pretty close to it find out when there's a threat against an end user somewhere. That's the important part at the end of the day, isn't it? Is making it all work as opposed to being really cool.
From a vendor standpoint, I can tell you that I'm seeing just that, which is ourselves and other vendors in the space kind of consolidated in a way. And what I mean by that is you might see what used to be a pure play backup vendor now coming to market with an endpoint security product, and vice versa, a traditional endpoint company looking into the backup technology. So I think that's been recognized by vendors and trying to move towards that kind of consolidation.
Yeah, when you can consolidate all that data, you're going to improve PTs, your mean time to detection and mean time to response, because you're not having to try to look at multiple different consoles, right? It's all in one place. And that's something that I think is a challenge for a lot of MSPs is they don't have a single pane of glass for security, and they're used to that from other tools, but there hasn't become some standardized way of doing that. And that was one of the things that we heard from a lot of our partners when we decided to build Overwatch. So make sure, whatever technology you're looking at in the future, like we said earlier, always be constantly about evaluating your stack and looking for those gaps. And when you find it, find the tool that obviously works from a price perspective, of course, but is it going to integrate, and are you constantly future proofing your stack for when you need to make that change in the future, so it's as it's not as disruptive as possible.
And let me make a point about what I said. I'm not saying everybody should buy everybody either. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying every vendor should pick up every other vendor and make it a free-for-all, about how many people you share. I'm just saying, partner A hooking up with VIPRE might bring credibility to partner A because they love VIPRE. Same thing with Overwatch. Overwatch hooking up with X may bring credibility to X or whatever the case may be. All of a sudden, as you have these vendors that, to Brian's point, have these unique products that do very cool things, well, if they're able to be brought along by a vendor that they trust, all of a sudden it makes a complete solution, and they're okay with who it is. I used to say this all the time in the old days of ERP, right? Business process reengineering. And my thing was always, SAP, PeopleSoft, etc. You know what? If it does the job, why do you care if it runs on a Volvo in your back room? Why do you care? It's software. It's supposed to help you do X, X, and X. What it runs on, how it runs, how it's maintained. Don't worry about that. You don't have to deal with that. Same thing as things go forward. I think it's going to come to the point where, you know what, we're going to deliver a solution. All you have to worry about is, does it work and does it get the results that you want it to?
I'm still stuck on a Volvo running cybersecurity, but that's
I used to love telling
at least
CIOs because they used to look and go, what?
So, without divulging any trade secrets or giving too much in your product roadmap, what will next gen look like in your particular cybersecurity areas? Anyone want to go? I know, Matthew, I know in training there's a lot of things coming down the pipeline.
Well, what I'll say is this: real-time training, right? Because it's one thing to send out stuff or to have them just do micro trainings and stuff like that, but having them have tools to do it right there and then when something's in front of them, or when they're questioning something, or when they need answers to something, it's going to bring a whole new realm of training and remembering and absorption, because they can do it right there on the spot with something that they're questioning, and therefore they'll remember. So that, and easy access to information from one spot without having to log in and out of several things, I think are going to make a huge difference as we move forward. So I would say real-time training and the ability to access tools from wherever you're at, rather than having to log into 20, 30 different programs to get that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jason?
Sure. So, for security software manufactured next gen, I think, to me, I think of the speeds and feeds, right? So, for example, take VIPRE endpoint. We talked a little bit about layered security and best practices, but it's also important, for example, in an endpoint, to have a layered endpoint security within your layered stack. So the file application level need to be protected, the network level needs to be protected. So for us, next gen is really trying to provide a set of features, technology features, that'll help the MSP. So, for example, that might mean better machine learning, better IDS rules. That's one I could speak to. We have over 8,000 IDS rules. That is a ton. So we've really shored up the network side of that, the network attack vector, DNS filtering, and some other tools. So, for me, next gen does mean dots and dashes. How can we make sure that we have the features and functionality within our product sets in the email vertical, the endpoint vertical, the network coverage, to be compelling and to keep the MSPs protected and their clients protected?
Yeah, I mean, first, before you worry about innovations, be sure you're doing the basics. I remember this, when SIM became really popular and it was the new next gen thing. Quickly, it got a reputation as being shelfware because it was hot, because it was the next thing that you had to have, and it started making its way into compliance, and every MSP thought they needed to offer it, and they really had never wrapped their heads around how difficult it was to manage. And 6 months later, it was delivering no value to their clients because they weren't really focused on some of the basics, and knowing how to take a next gen technology and use it to augment what they're doing now, right? But other than the basics, if cyber resilience has already been a focus for you and your clients and fundamental to you, start reevaluating what your baseline of legitimate activity looks like, so that your MTTs are faster and better. And that said, also with the unpredictability that comes with more people accessing connections remotely, again, look at that integrating AI and behavior-based anomaly detection and really dig in and find it. The two things that really excite me about our platform when it comes to like AI and ML is the capabilities it can do with SOAR, the application SOAR in our software, and with the open XDR ability to integrate with all those things. And so those anomalies can be detected faster from all these different sources. And we've really just started scratching the surface of what, our SOAR capabilities can do, because it is so powerful. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch for us, specifically about what we do over the next few months about how we innovate and improve the power of SOAR within our platform.
That makes sense. Now, many of the tech experts continue to emphasize the need for layered security, as was brought up a little bit earlier too. What does an ideal layered security offering entail, in your opinion? We want to go around through. Do you want to start with you, Travis, while we're chatting?
Sure. Yeah. So layered security, it's kind of a broad term, right? And just about everyone has the prevention layers in place. And obviously that's not enough, right? Now prevention layers like firewall and antivirus and even email security are just enough to keep the honest man honest. I think the bigger challenge that I see is, like we talked about before, is selling clients on layered security. A lot of MSPs I talk to have the right layers of security in place. They just don't push clients hard enough to adopt it. And, if you're sell the cake and not the ingredients, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. You should be selling the security cake, and you talk about the ingredients that are in it, but stick to selling the package as a whole. Make sure you've added the appropriate detection layers there, that you have the basics, like stuff like MFA and security awareness training that we've talked about. It doesn't have to get super complicated. It doesn't have to be a million products either. You can really focus on what is the core stuff. And then as you continue to bake those cakes, maybe you add some ingredients down the road, but get the basics in and start, pushing hard what you have in place now to get that out in front of your customers.
Other thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, I'd agree with Travis. He summed it up pretty succinctly. Layer security used to just kind of back in the image of, okay, network, email, and endpoint. Check. I'm layered. Got it. Yeah. I touched a little bit about layers within the layers, the email ATP or a deep protective endpoint. But I think Travis hit on a lot of great points and what the evolving layered security means and how to sell that downstream. That's the catch. And I think Travis and Matthew both hit on selling the cake, not the ingredients, selling the package, or not the disparate services within the package.
And sometimes it's even the upstream too, like co-managed IT. I hear that's where sometimes they're having difficulty getting layered security added because they'll have an IT person that thinks that Office 365 alone is strong enough. I know it's hard to believe, but especially if you've got like one IT person who has learned old school way of doing it and was sold by Microsoft, you need to put layers on. And we're starting to hear right now a lot of push towards co-managed IT with the remote workforce. And I think we haven't heard the end of that, especially into 2021. I think that'll be a continued opportunity for the channel.
These guys are smarter than me, but when I liken it out, when I talk to MSPs, I'm assuming based on the technical terms I heard and that I remember, I make it simple. I'm like, look, you got to protect your front door. Okay? Nobody should be able to get in your front door. If they do get in your front door, your staff needs to know how to block, kick, punch, whatever the case may be, to not let it get past them purposefully. If it does get past them, then you need to have something on the back end that's taking care of what got past them in an appropriate manner to make sure that it's detected, it's eliminated, right? And then it's recovered, so to speak, everything that's going on. So, I talk in general terms because I don't know any better. But to me, that's the way you look at it, right? You look at it from a standpoint of, I don't want it coming in, but if it gets there, I want someone standing there going, not happening.
Yeah.
What's that?
I just think that's a great point. And in security, I've used the house analogy before and mapped it to different products. So for example, right, you got the fence is your firewall, the front door is locked, that's your endpoint, the windows are locked, that's your endpoint. But what if somebody does get in? Then what? Well, that's threat hunting, proactive, right? And you've got to go on down the line, but you know, Matt, you're right. Keep it simple, and I think that that's a great, great advice for MSPs.
Yeah. If you don't cover all of it, then you're just hurting yourself, because if you train people, something's going to get past them. I don't care who they are. They're people. They're human. And at the same time, you know, the reality at the end of the day is if you just have the technology and don't train the people, well, then a lot's going to get past them, you know, and you're going to be working twice as hard to take care of things. It's got to be a layered approach. And to what you guys said, and I know we've talked about it, make your package. I can't reiterate it enough. Just like you said about the cake, look, you're the smart ones. You're the ones they're paying to understand and do this. Create your stack, deliver your stack for whatever the price, however you want to do it, and then update your stack on a regular basis based on the growing and changing landscape out there. You know, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's as easy as snapping your fingers, but I am saying that if you're an MSP and you want to focus on security, spend a little time, evaluate this stuff, and put something together where you can feel comfortable going, Mr. Customer, you must have this, period. You must. You don't want to take it? I don't know that I want to do business with you because you're not willing to do the basics of what I think you need to do to protect yourself.
There's never been more evidence in the MSP's corner than today in terms of the landscape. And you know, NBC Nightly News ran a piece on cybersecurity last night. This is in the forefront of the conversation. I think Travis touched on that earlier. This is absolutely in the forefront, or you did too, Matthew, and you said you used to have to explain what an MSP is. Now, you know, the FBI is talking about MSPs. So it's coming to the forefront, I think.
It's the easiest it's ever been for MSPs to talk to clients about cybersecurity. And if you're not, you're missing a huge opportunity.
No, definitely. Well, it's been a fantastic conversation with you guys today. Unfortunately, our time is running down. Why don't we do a quick final thoughts from the group, especially, you know, related to MSP planning as we close out 2020. And many are hoping, as I said, that we close out 2020 quickly and move into a different year, because it's yeah, I think many want to put it behind. Why don't we start with you, Travis?
Yeah, you know, the unfortunate fact is that cyber criminals drive innovation in our industry. It's the defender's dilemma. The intruder only needs to exploit one weakness in order to compromise their target. And as long as the intruders evolve faster than the defenders, then their objective will be easier to achieve. And they like it to be easy. You know, there's so much low-hanging fruit out there for cyber criminals that if you just make it difficult for them, difficult to achieve their objective, they'll move on. You know, honestly, you know, you're not going to be able to stop a determined nation state actor from compromising a client, but that's really rare. Most cybercrime is purely opportunistic. You know, besides hacktivists, you know, it's not really specifically targeted. So the first step is not being an easy target, right? And that's what you and your clients are. If you don't have layers of defense, the kind of layers of defense that we talked about today.
Why don't we go to you, Matthew?
You know, like we talked about at the end of the day, you can't assume that people understand cybersecurity. You just can't. What you think is obvious is not obvious to probably 50% of the people that you speak to. You have to educate them. You also have to have a layered security approach. You can't just expect people to stop it. You need to have software and hardware in the right places to help facilitate that appropriately. You know, as Travis said, I have a friend who's a police officer, and what he said is, you know, I used to laugh about those alarm signs in the front, you know, of your house, because I had an alarm system, but I never worried about putting that out there. He said, believe it or not, that will deter 9 out of 10 criminals that are looking to break in, because they're not looking at your house thinking you have a Picasso. They're looking for someone that they can break in and steal stuff. And if you have that alarm, most of them go, yeah, it's not worth the risk. So make sure you're doing at least the basics, and the basics anymore have changed. It's not antivirus. It's not anti-spamware. It's a whole new level. So do me a favor, focus on security, create a bundle that matches what you think your clients need, and don't sell it as an add-on. Give it as part of your package that you charge them for. You do that, I think you'll be much happier, much more successful, and have an opportunity to make a lot more money.
And Jason, we'll wrap with you here.
What can I add? Matthew and Travis said it all pretty well. I couldn't agree with these guys more about not being the low-hanging fruit, and the use of obfuscation in security is nothing new. You're switching up the ports, trying to disguise yourself, just not being that big target. So, Travis, I couldn't agree more. Don't be the low-hanging fruit there. And when you do employ a layered security approach, you're immediately not going to be the low-hanging fruit. That should immediately lift you up off the ground some. I agree with what Matthew said about security, and I try to stay away from the word bundling, but the idea of these mandatory security packages, and I would just say there's a lot of opportunity to grow an MSP security practice right now. The good news about the hardship that the pandemic has caused is we've shown that there's a lot of different billable services that can be incorporated to pick up some of those opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. It's cybersecurity is a differentiator. If it wasn't strong enough before, it surely is today with everything that's going on. So
I haven't heard a single MSP say that they're not going to double down on cybersecurity for growth. Not a single one.
Yeah, it's great. So, well, on behalf of the IOTSA team, I'd like to thank Matthew Koenig of Secure Now, Travis Ray from HighWire Networks, and Jason Norton of VIPRE Security for joining us today. Be sure to check out IOTSA.com weekly for more insightful channel cybersecurity content, and have a safe and secure day. Thank you all.